All right, welcome to TECHnicality with your hosts, Jordan Boyd, Joanne Yao.
Hello, episode 5.
5?
Yes.
Are we high-fiving that?
High-five the episode 5.
High five on 5. Well, how was your weekend, Yao?
It was uneventful this particular weekend.
Weren't you at an indoor children's playground?
I was, which is why I didn't pick up your phone call. But because it's midterms week for me, so part of my master's degree program is they make us do midterm papers. And because it's my last semester, I don't just take one class. They make us take 2 classes.
Rude.
Super rude. And so I've got a paper that was due today. I handed it in just under the wire. And then I've got one due Thursday. I've got 2 assignments, one in each class, that are due tomorrow in Scotland time, 5 o'clock. I don't know if I'm going to make those deadlines. Not sure just yet. Certainly recording TECHnicality is on my priority list. I hope my teachers are not hearing me say that. But my priority is to get these podcasts out to our audience on time.
Yes.
And getting some good feedback and good requests for additional stories. And how about yourself? How was your weekend besides preparing for our episode 5?
My weekend was good. I flew my developer in from LA, and I've never met him in person. So I'm a big believer in virtual teams and that you can kind of work from anywhere. And so I hired this guy out of LA, Stanford grad, and so I met him yesterday evening. It was really awesome to finally meet him. Obviously, it felt like we met before, but there's just something about that human connection that's still so powerful. But yeah, it was good.
Good. Well, it's interesting you say that, because more and more I really appreciate the fact that I can work from anywhere. If I want to take a class from a school in Europe and I want to work on it at an indoor playground on Sunday, I can.
Totally.
If you want to bring in the talent and the brains and get some collaboration from across the board, you can.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what have you on our plate today? I know that we're going to take a bit of a different spin today, and we're going to kind of surprise each other with what we're going to talk about. So I only have a slight idea of what's on your mind, but I'm waiting for you to spring this on me.
Well, and I thought that, I like that we do news. I think it's good that we do news, but I think it's also good that we just do things that we care about or that we think is important in the conversation.
Yeah.
And one of those things, because I know a lot of people that have done these, is, have you heard of these, like 23andMe, Ancestry.com, test your DNA? Basically, you spit into a tube and then you send it off, and then they send you back a thing, and it's like, Joanne, you're like, part this, part that, 30% this, and they break down your genetic history.
Yeah, I've heard about it in the context of people trying to, this enormous population of people who are discovering that they're direct descendants of Genghis Khan through, I don't know if it's Ancestry.com, but some kind of heredity genetic mapping type of service.
Yeah.
Which opens up a lot of possibilities for searching down long lost relatives and seeing where you came from, tracing genetic, predispositions. You talked last time a little bit about genetic predispositions for addictions, mental health illnesses. So
I don't know how much they're like doing. I think they maybe do some of that. I think they're more doing just like your genetic makeup in terms of where you come from. Yeah.
Yeah. Where do you come from, by the way? What's your background?
As far as I know, from the ginger beard that I have, it's Irish, with a bit of French, I think. But funny enough, my cousin just took one of these tests.
Yeah.
And it said he was those things, and then it said he was 1/10 Jewish.
No kidding.
And we were like, okay, that's interesting. We've never known that about our family history. Not that 1/10 is that much, but we were like, oh, wow, that's kind of cool.
But still, when you think about human origins and the way humans have started, theoretically, in Africa and then dispersed all throughout the world, to be 1/10 of, one particular descendant that's still pretty significant.
Totally.
And interesting if you never knew that part of yourself.
So that was kind of cool. But, I've known this for a while, and I've told people this, and they're like, they had no idea, right? So
Yeah.
at least 23andMe, that's the one that and I think they all do it, so we can talk about all of them. But so 23andMe is founded by this lady named Anne Wojcicki, or Wojcicki, or something like that. And, you know, you're looking into it, you're like, oh, that's cool, woman founded it, blah, blah, blah. Simple Google search will tell you that Anne is the former spouse of Mr. Sergey Brin. Sergey Brin
I know that name.
is the founder of Google.
Yeah.
Co-founder of Google.
Right.
So, in my opinion...
Oh, you've got a conspiracy theory you're going to
No, it's
present
not
to
even
us,
conspiracy
don't you?
theory. It's like, if... Obviously, the wife of the Google founder is very aware of, like, data and how much it's worth and how Sergey Brin has built a massive company from it. They have 2 kids together, so obviously they're still cordial.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it just made a lot of people start to go, you know, I wonder if they're comparing the search data and then aligning that with people's genetic data to potentially be able to predict even better people's habits and people's, you know, decisions and stuff like that.
Well, I guess that does bring up that nature-nurture dispute that's, I think psychologists and at least psychologists talk about is what is it about people that determines what they become? Is it in their genetics? Is it their environment? Is it some complicated mix of both? Which I think most people would agree that it is some kind of complicated mix of both.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, when I thought that you were going to bring up some kind of conspiracy theory, I thought you were going to start touching on. I mean, are there any thoughts or accusations about?
It gets darker, yeah.
Oh, it does.
Gets darker.
Take us down the rabbit hole.
So last year, the pharmaceutical company GlaxoSmithKline,
Yeah.
which I guess is one of the big 3 or big 4,
Sure is.
invested $300 million into 23andMe.
Okay.
Okay. The reason they're doing that is because they want to be informed on which drugs they should test and which drugs they should patent,
Mm-hmm.
so that they can appeal to all these people who have gotten their genetics tested. But I don't think most of the people who are doing this are aware that that's happening. That's what I would say.
That would be the dark side of things. And I mean, I'll put the spin on this and going back to traits that are inherent to people of particular descent. So I was involved in a study with Johnson & Johnson and their research and development department because they were interested in testing contact lens fit and comfort in people with Asian eyes. And I don't know if you knew this, but I'm Chinese.
I didn't know that.
110%.
You're Chinese.
I am. Yeah, and
you know.
so I know it's I sometimes just
But you don't have very Chinese eyes. You've told me that.
right. Yeah, I don't, but I think I still do have in the spectrum
Chinese
of
enough. Yeah.
right. Well, I mean, I think within a spectrum of what
Right.
kind of eyes do Chinese people have, they were interested to see how the contact lenses fit me, how I wore them, how it affected my vision, and I thought that was interesting because initially I thought that the shape of Chinese eyes came primarily from the lids and the bone structure, but they said it actually also involves the eyeball shape.
Weird.
So my personal story, I'm going back to what you're saying, is that I don't know that it's that far of a leap for a pharmaceutical company like GlaxoSmithKline, similar to what Johnson & Johnson was interested in, is to find out what predispositions people of particular heritages have. But then again, maybe their intentions are not as innocent as we think. What are there any reasons for people to be suspicious of GlaxoSmithKline's intentions?
I just think big pharma in general is a sketchy industry.
Yeah.
And I think they're always looking like, I would say that's how they cover it up, right? That's how they say, oh, we're just looking at new drugs and whatever. What if it's so that they can say, well, in 6 months, based on these genetic, or maybe it's 5 years, let's say 5 years.
Yeah.
If in 5 years, according to these genetic results that we're able to analyze without people really knowing. This drug, there a lot of people, at least in this subset of millions of people, because they get millions of people doing these tests, are going to need this type of drug. So why don't we jack the price up in like 4 years so that by the time people need it in 5 years, it'll make us so much money that we can all retire younger. That's where I think it's sketchy.
Yeah, I see what you're saying.
And I just don't think there's any transparency around this. It's like, it's one thing, they're being sold this idea that they're just getting their DNA tested, which is a nice idea, right?
Sure.
But then it's being used. I mean, again, who knows who they're really selling it to? I wouldn't be surprised if it was more than just these big pharma companies.
So what we're coming down to is really, again, another privacy/consent issue. So let me ask you this, and let me ask you this: if you knew that your genetic makeup could be used by this company, would you pay more, A, to have certain restrictions put onto your data and your information that it couldn't be used, or B, would you pay more to have some kind of medical treatment or health related service more tailored for you based on your genetic makeup?
Personally, I would just not use a Silicon Valley one.
Yeah.
I would just go to a private lab.
That can be done too?
Yeah, you can go to a private lab. There's private labs everywhere in most cities that can test your genetics. Yeah, they're not good at marketing. So 23andMe is just like better at marketing. They have like a cool name. Ancestry.com, like they have a cool name.
Yeah.
They're just like better at marketing the fact that they sell that service.
Right.
Like someone will come along and be like, now you can spit in a tube and get your allergy tests for like $100. Like that'll happen. It'll just be like someone who's just better at marketing allergy tests or you know what I mean? Like
doesn't
stuff
that
like
sound
that.
a little familiar? Like with one drop of blood, you can.
It does, and that's why I'm like kind of bringing it up now. There is sort of an additional conspiracy theory around this.
Bring it on me.
So with 23andMe, I think it's that, so they store your sample. Okay.
Okay.
Which seems weird. Like, what do they need it for once they've tested it?
Aren't they asking? So the premise
like
is that
why?
they're not asking to store your.
I think they do, but like,
spit?
why? So you can like test it again.
I don't know. Maybe.
I don't know. It's weird. Okay, so they save these, right? So there's theories that someday, and I don't know if the conspiracy is not a good word, but they're just like theories from people that like understand, you know, where technology is going.
Right.
Eventually, because right now you're like, oh yeah, sure, it's an extra $5 and they can store it, and then I don't know, they probably make something up like your kid can test yours again or something if they didn't have the test that you gave them.
Right.
The theory is that as we move closer to an ability to clone people with their DNA,
Yeah.
that someday they have this stockpile of people's DNA that they can sell back to you and say, well, we have your DNA from when you were like, 35.
Mm-hmm.
So we can clone you back to 35 or something like that. No, you don't think so?
I think
That's what I'm hearing.
And maybe
they can sell it back to you for whatever amount they want because they have it and you don't.
I guess the irony here is that the lawyer is much less suspicious than the business owner.
Why do they
here.
store it? Why do you think they store it?
Well, I have a
Just
theory
for
that
fun?
they would store it. No, because if someone
spit.
wants to challenge the accuracy of the records, the authenticity of the records, then they would have it. I mean, it's kind of like if you deposit your money in a bank account. I mean, it's like there are records that are stored.
Mm-hmm.
Everything there is stored. I'm just trying to see why.
Here's the other thing. There's some of these companies don't even let you decide. They just store it.
Yeah, I get that. I get why that would be an issue.
What? Why are they storing it without? And you can't not store it with them. You can't say some of them. You can't even not have it stored.
Right.
I just don't really see why, like, for lawsuits, like, I don't.
Well, I would like to know more specifically then is what do people who use these services, what do they actually know about this? Because if there is, even if it's buried in boilerplate, is it buried in boilerplate that we're keeping it? I just need more facts. They
use lawyer language to basically say, we may have third-party testing done on these, and so, yeah. And once you send it in, we own it.
Right.
I don't know. The whole thing's fishy to me.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, for me, just don't go to one of these big ones. Go to an independent one. Go to, like, your doctor and be like, I want to get my genetics tested, and I don't want to go to a big San Francisco-based clone machine. DNA fixer. That's all I'm saying.
Right.
So be careful who you give your DNA to.
Yeah, that's...
Who knows if they share with the government, too? I don't know.
Right.
But they probably do.
No, I hear you.
The same way Apple wants to collect your thumbprint.
This is actually a thought that came to me years and years and years ago when I went to Disneyland with my brother. And it used to be that their re-entry into the park was your fingerprint. And I thought that was the coolest thing ever. And we were maybe, I don't know, I want to say I was 19 and he was probably 16. And even at that time, he patently refused to...
Good for him.
Right. And I really didn't see what the problem was. But now that privacy concerns and data collection is more of an issue, I can see where he was coming from. But, at the time, he was way before my time anyway, the way he thought. So.
I just would not be super shocked if, like, in the next 1 to 3 to 5 years, we start hearing some real sketchy stuff about these guys.
About promiscuous DNA samples.
Just about who they're sharing the data with and how they're connecting the data to your buying habits and the data they have on your search and the data they have on your social media, and they're compiling them all together.
Right.
To even more aggressively segment you into different segments. So now they can say, Joanne is mainland Chinese, and she has these buying habits, and now we have a not mainland Chinese person with this, and so they're like differentiating.
Right.
I don't know.
Well, I can see then maybe the prospect of the person with more favorable traits would then market themselves that way as well. That would be of value to them. Possibly. Do you ever see the movie Gattaca? It's an old movie. Gattaca's a fantastic movie. It was
watch old movies.
Well, anyway, you should. And we'll talk about movies and the value of movies in the artistic realm.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Third topic. Yeah.
Yeah, that's my teaser for the moment. Gattaca is number one. Even the title, Gattaca, I believe, is paying homage to the basic amino acids that make up your DNA. Which is, I don't even know what they are. It starts with G, A, C, and T.
I thought you were a science major.
I am, but that was a lifetime ago. I don't remember these things. It's like guanine, adenine, thymine, and cyanine, something like that. Cyanide? No, it can't be cyanide. I don't know. Anyway, the premise of the story, the premise of the story, definitely, see why I'm not a doctor, you see? The premise of the movie was that everybody is judged based on your genetic makeup. So people were favoring having genetically designed children, and the people who didn't do that, their children were deemed to be the children of God. Like God created these children, but they were not given the opportunities because genetically they were not as strong, they were not as smart, they were not as fast, they were not as immune to disease. So the movie then goes to, it focuses on Jude Law, which was one of his first movies. He was one of these genetically modified babies, and he was, I believe, like an athletic phenom, like Olympics of Olympics type of a thing, but he was injured in a spinal accident and was paralyzed from the waist down. But still, his DNA is valuable, despite the fact that his physical capabilities were not there anymore. So he then lends his DNA to one of these children of God, which is played by Ethan Hawke, because Ethan Hawke wants to open the doors of opportunity to this wonderful job that he wanted to have, and the girl, Uma Thurman, who he wanted to court. And it just, I don't know, I think it's a movie that, despite it being old, and maybe it's not that old, it's something like in the 90s or something, I think it's worth a watch.
All right.
Yeah.
Check that out.
On to the next segment, yeah?
Yeah.
All right, so all this breaking news, I was really excited to talk to you today about the latest development in the Huawei scandal with Meng Wanzhou, who is the CFO of Huawei. So I'll start with a timeline. First of all, she was arrested on December 1st, 2018 in Vancouver, and it was based on a U.S. warrant for her arrest, alleging that she had breached some U.S. imposed restrictions on trading with Iran, some bank and financial fraud. And then the events that followed from there seemed on one side too coincidental, and on the other side, I don't know, there's some proponents who believe that it is justified. But on December 10th, so 10 days after that, there were two Canadian government officials who were detained in China on suspicion that they were stealing state secrets and conspiring with each other. And so now there was this war between really China and the U.S., and now Canada's caught in the middle because Canada's got Huawei's CFO, and China's got two Canadian detainees, and both of them are saying, like, listen, Canada, you've got to side with us. Now, what it's come down to essentially is Canada saying, okay, we're going to agree to extradite Meng on these U.S. charges. And she has now responded with a lawsuit of her own, suing the Canadian federal government, the RCMP, Canadian Border Services Agency, for detaining her, searching her improperly, interrogating her for 3 hours against her constitutional rights. And then there's been this whole debate, even at the, what was it, back in February, it was the Mobile World Congress, I believe is what it was, where the head of Huawei came out with a statement saying, we are not bad, we don't do bad things. And the U.S. basically thumping on their chest saying, yes, you are, you're evil, you're bad. And both sides of them looking for an ally. So even, I believe there was the U.S. attempts to get the U.K. to take on the U.S.'s positions, like as far as don't further develop these 5G technologies, or don't support Huawei. And the UK is essentially saying, okay, we're going to conduct a fact-based analysis. We're going to see exactly what espionage and security risks they have. So most of the world is tagging out saying, listen, we're going to take a business approach to this. But Canada's kind of holding a person and pointing fingers at China saying, you're not adhering to the rule of law, which made me Google what do they mean by the rule of law? It was this theme that's come up. Do you know what they're talking about when they talk about the rule of law?
No, you mentioned it, but yeah, no.
Right. So it's this. It's not that it's unspoken. It's like this universal rule that countries won't arbitrarily hold and detain people and exercise their powers unfairly. So now there's this debate about who is abiding by the rule of law. So I think it's going to be interesting to see what Canada's poised to do next, being torn between the U.S. and China in this particular debate. So I'm
guessing we're going to align with the U.S. That'd be my guess.
For political reasons or for procedural reasons?
Because they're right underneath us and they have nukes.
You don't think China
and
does? You don't think China has nukes?
China doesn't protect Canada.
Well, okay.
I would align with America way before I'd align with China.
So you think that Canada would make a decision based on political reasons as opposed to...
That's the only reason they put her in prison. Was because the Americans said put her in prison.
True, but now that's according to the rule of law.
Mm-hmm.
And what Trudeau, and poor Trudeau, I say poor Trudeau in kind of a patriotic, or not patriotic, patronizing way is what I meant to say. Well, that was a Freudian slip, wasn't it? He's got a lot on his plate right now, but I mean, as far as what he's dealing with, I think that Trudeau is handling this in not only political but legally. I think he's doing what he's supposed to do in this particular situation because he's affording her lawyers, and he's if she wants to file a lawsuit, great, that's up to her to file a lawsuit. That's her right to do it. She's not, as far as I know, she's not a Canadian citizen or even a Canadian permanent resident any longer, but still, I mean, she's still afforded the rights to our justice system.
She's trying to delay the extradition, right? Isn't that what she's trying to do?
I don't think that this particular lawsuit will delay or extend the extradition process. I believe this because these particular lawsuits are, I just don't think that they're going to, I think factually there's going to be a lot of similar facts, but I don't think the proceedings in one are necessarily going to intertwine with the others. So what do you think
she's going to accomplish?
I think she wants to prove a point. I think she wants to...
like that her rights were violated?
Yeah, and I mean, I don't do constitutional law. I don't do criminal law in Canada or anything. I don't have that kind of a background. But my suspicion is that the way she was detained at an airport. Now, airport security clearances have different protocol than, let's say, some kind of investigation or search under criminal proceedings if it's going to be leading to an arrest. So I would be interested to see how the Canadian federal government and the RCMP and the Canadian Border Services, how they respond to that lawsuit. It was just filed yesterday. So I'd like to see how they address the search as part of national security to get through an airport, as opposed to search leading to an arrest, especially of this caliber.
I think she'd have a better chance if she was a permanent resident.
Well, I don't know. I mean, it doesn't, the way Canada's constitution applies, it applies to anybody in the country, regardless of whether you're a citizen or a permanent resident. But I know you're coming from the viewpoint, though, that there's political motivations to handle this. My point.
If you're flying through our country, we can still detain you for some other country.
Yeah, you sure can. But then those extradition procedures have to be followed as well. I'd
be surprised if they didn't follow them for the executive of Huawei's, this founder of Huawei's daughter.
Yeah.
I mean.
Well, I mean, what's interesting as well, though, is that allegedly the Chinese government is saying, well, Canada's not adhering to the rule of law, and we in China are a rule of law based country, and yet the two Canadian detainees have not been afforded the right to counsel, to their lawyers. They haven't been able to contact their families. So there's a lot of things here under that universal rule of law that, in my opinion, haven't been followed.
Even people in China know that's a load of shite coming from the government. But I think she blatantly lied about a holding company that they have. Mm-hmm. And said it wasn't a holding. They do not have anything to do with it, and it was their company. Mm-hmm. And then they exchanged money through it specifically so that they could do deals with Iran, so that they'd be undetected. Yeah. She blatantly committed. I don't know what that is. If that's fraud or if that's breaking. What do you call those things? When they put like an embargo, but like sanctions. She broke a sanction, right, that says you cannot, which you cannot deal with doing business. Right. Again, there's China for you, right? They're doing business with Iran, which is just not. I mean, it's a terrorist place, sponsoring terrorists. Iran's one of the worst, I would say, and it's just threatening the U.S. and threatening Canada with like nuclear threats. Like she blatantly broke the law. So for me, it's like, if you're gonna do that, just because you're like someone important in China doesn't mean you can just get around the law.
Right. Well, and
the people they detained in China are not some founders of one of the biggest companies in China connected to the Chinese government's daughters.
Right. Well, that's another reason why I'm interested to see how the federal government and all the other parties, how they respond to that, because I know that so far her lawsuit has been obviously publicly available, but the defense is not. So, so I'd like to see the way they spin the facts and spin what defenses that they have in light of the evidence that they have.
It would surprise me if the intention wasn't to limit the extradition length to a point where the U.S. gives up and just says, okay, fine. Like, she's got this lawsuit in Canada that she's filed now. That's going to take 2 or 3 years. She's basically under house arrest for 2 or 3 years in Vancouver. I think she's turned over her passport, so I don't even know if she can fly back. I don't think she can fly back. She can't leave the country.
Well, as far as
she committed it in the U.S. and Canada.
Well, as far as I understand, the extradition process is that she's going to be sent from Canada to the States.
Yeah.
To answer to those.
Yeah.
Right.
So my point is that I'd be surprised if this move isn't to block that in some way or slow that or say, well, because Canada detained me improperly, well, now you can extradite her because technically they broke her civil rights or whatever, human rights, and therefore you actually have to not detain her anymore, and she is free to do whatever she wants. And if she ever flies through America, which if you've looked into the case, she never flies through America. She never flies through the U.S., right? Because they know what they're doing. And but they should also know that the U.S. clearly has, we share
a porous border.
Well, we share a border, but we share security information. We share, our agencies share information. And they have for, God knows how long, since like the 60s.
Right, but if this lawsuit is hers, though, then it's hers to prove the claims. I don't know that it necessary, unless she thinks that there's some way for it to affect the extradition process. And again, if there's people out there, like policymakers, lawyers, who can kind of clarify that for me, my understanding is that the extradition procedures are completely separate from her claims for what I understand to be compensation and redress for having violated her rights, which I believe is typically just it's like a monetary damages kind of a thing. Like I don't know that it's related to detentions or liberties or anything else like that.
You'd almost think, though, if you're unlawfully detained or something in that process is unlawful, it would sort of void their ability to hold you and therefore potentially make it harder or void their ability to extradite you to the U.S. because they didn't cross all their T's when they were detaining you.
But that would be part of the extradition procedure, though, as far as I understand. It wouldn't be part of her claims because otherwise then people who are subject to extradition processes would then just file lawsuits all over the place claiming, that they are owed money for constitutional breaches. I'm don't get me wrong. I'm quite confident that those two procedures are going to be related and that whatever evidence comes up in one can be used for the other. But I don't think that one is going to necessarily interfere with the proceedings in the other.
Well, and on a side note, don't buy Huawei because it is run by the Chinese government and they are for sure collecting all the data and analyzing it. And I think shameful is maybe a little harsh. I do think it's shameful that they allow Huawei to advertise on Hockey Night in Canada and these oh my gosh, they sponsor everything in hockey. They've figured out it's like, what do Canadians love? Hockey. So it's like the desk for hockey for CBC, the CBC run by the friggin' Canadian government, basically. Huawei on their desk. Every break sponsored by Huawei. Every commercial in the breaks is Huawei. It's like an insanely aggressive push for these phones.
Wow, I didn't realize that.
Oh my gosh, yeah. And every time I see it, I'm like, why are we allowing this? Why are we allowing this company that's clearly state-run, to come into our country and and again, with who you never know what's in a cell phone. You don't know what else, other technology they put in there that creates some network between all the phones. I'm just saying, there's another one that I think will, over time, it will come out more and more that they're just siphoning this data and just shipping it back to China, analyzing it, being able to predict things and be able to monitor conversations so that they can intervene on markets quicker and capitalize on stuff faster. That'd be my guess. I just think if you're Canadian, don't use a Huawei cell phone.
Well, I'm just interested in, now that you mentioned that, what's what's Hockey Night in Canada's take on this, or any company that?
I think the CBC should have to answer for it. I think the CBC should have to. I mean, first of all, don't even get me started on how corrupt the CBC is and all that crap they do, and attacking charities and attacking very hardworking people with these false.
Fill me in on this one. This is new for me.
Well, I can't get into it too much because there's ongoing lawsuits with them, but there's ongoing lawsuits with them in so many different ways, and I get it. When people do investigative journalism, it leads to a lot of lawsuits because you're balancing the story with the sensational nature of sort of these claims that can be detrimental to businesses, but that they don't really care. It's a good story. It's just another story for them. So the CBC has done that numerous times, has gone after either individuals or companies or charities and tried to take them out. And then once they get into lawsuits with them, continue to try and take them out during the lawsuits, which you'd think would be sketchy, right? Or they'll go after a company that they're in a lawsuit with, and they'll say, can we get a comment from your business? Yeah. And the business will say, well, we're in a lawsuit. We can't comment on this right now because we have an active lawsuit with you.
Right.
Like, how do you not know that? And then CBC takes it back and they go, oh, they refuse to comment.
Yeah, I see what you're saying.
There's some sketchy practices going on at CBC. That's all I'm saying.
All right.
And I think it's very much state run. I think it's very much like it's a tool for the Canadian government to kind of steer the narrative in the way that they want it to. I'm always a little bit more critical of CBC than I am other news networks.
Who do you trust for your news?
I mean, for Canadian news?
Yeah.
I mean, Globe and Mail seems pretty reputable. National Post seems pretty reputable.
Yeah.
They're not state run, I don't think. I don't think they get a bunch of money from the Canadian government. Like, I just think CBC's they get tons. Like, I mean, when they do lawsuits, it's basically like our tax money to an extent being used in their lawsuits. You don't think?
Well, I don't really know. Honestly, to be honest, I don't even know. I had been gone. I'd lived stateside for so long that I don't even know. I have no idea.
I just think it's interesting that CBC's been the biggest like Huawei supporter.
Well, that's what I'm saying is that it's been radio silent about that, like literally and figuratively radio silent. That I didn't even realize there was that crossover because I don't really get a whole lot of TV. I don't really watch TV. It's not the way I consume my entertainment anymore.
Yeah, no, and I don't watch that much TV either. But even you see it online too, right? But I'm dealing it from the marketing side. Right. So I'm dealing it from like the businesses call me and are like, "Oh, great, CBC's attacking us again," and then I have to go deal with that.
Right.
Anyways, there's a lot of issues with what they're doing, but Huawei as a whole, I mean. And this isn't, by the way, the only corrupt thing about Huawei that's happened. I mean, there's a lot of corrupt things that they've been doing. But that this young lady essentially lied, like on the record, lied about this holding company to make deals with Iran. And they're like offended that they're trying to get her in trouble. It's like, at what point are you not above the law? That would be my question to them and to Huawei. At what point are you're not above the law? Well, I think they think they're above the law. That's what I would say. That's the vibe I get.
I haven't seen the reasonings behind what they did just yet, but I mean, it's clearly going to have to come out. Whether it's orchestrated and packaged and polished up really well, I still would like to see what the response is to why and how the U.S. is arresting her, on what basis.
Yeah, I think they'll throw out the lawsuit in Canada, and I think they'll do a plea deal with her so that they don't admit anything, and then they'll give her like 1 year time served or house arrest or something. They'll just slap her on the wrist, but they'll do some plea deal with it where they'll have to pay a bunch of money. That'd be my guess. And I'm not a lawyer.
Well, I am, and I don't have the answers.
I just see these cases all the time.
Right.
They get these plea deals, right, with these rich people.
Yeah.
But On the topic of technology, not quite cell phone technology like Huawei, but Netflix.
Yes.
Do you love Netflix?
I sure love it. That is how I get my entertainment.
I love Netflix too. And it's crazy to think about, like, how many years, like 5 years ago that it didn't even exist?
Netflix?
What? How long has it been? 7?
12 years.
No, 12 years we've had Netflix?
Mm-hmm.
Oh my God.
So I've
Well-
been streaming it for like 7.
Okay.
Yeah,
So
I've only
like
had Netflix for, I think, maybe 4 years.
4 or 5 years?
Yeah.
So like to the point where it actually got like bigger, right? It's crazy to think about, like 4 or 5 years ago, we like didn't have Netflix. Like that's insane.
Yeah.
We had to go to the DVD store, like Blockbuster. And
I still watch DVDs.
I
and
know,
Blu-ray.
we've talked about this.
Oh, why do you act like you're so unimpressed?
I don't know. I just don't. It's not a. I don't get it.
It's still a legitimate form
They
of
can
getting
scratch.
entertainment.
Why would you buy something that can scratch and break?
It's disposable. Like, you just get another one. Just buy another DVD if yours is scratched.
It's true. Okay, so Netflix. If anyone watched the Oscars, did you watch the Oscars?
I didn't.
Some of it, any of it?
I heard
Did you hear
about,
about it?
I
Yeah.
heard about Lady Gaga and Bradley Cooper having basically
Yeah.
a love affair on stage. Which,
They are good at acting. That's true.
That's the thing, is it's all an act.
It's
Come
clearly
on.
acting, but
Yeah.
everyone's like, "Oh my God, they're in love." It's like, nope, they're actors, and they gotcha. So Netflix was up for 13 Oscars,
Okay.
not including Best Picture. Best Picture, they were not nominated, but their big winner was this film Roma,
Yeah.
foreign language film, one best foreign language film, one screenplay, a couple other ones, and the controversial movie that took home the Oscar for Best Picture came from Steven Spielberg's production company.
Mm-hmm.
So in the last like week or so, I've seen, and I guess Spielberg for like a while has been like a really harsh critic of Netflix, right? And I think part of it is they make ungodly amounts of money and don't pay people very much. That's what I've heard.
Okay.
They never release numbers,
Netflix doesn't?
ever.
Okay.
They don't even release, like, let's say you're a comedian, right? Let's say you're Joe Rogan, and you released your comedy special on Netflix. They don't even tell Joe Rogan how his comedy special did. They just say, here's your check. Have a good day.
Well, if people aren't
Isn't that
disputing
crazy?
it, if people aren't disputing it,
Well, they have no choice. They have distribution, so they have to. It's basically like, well, you could go put it on some other shithole network that doesn't have 50 million people use it every day,
yeah.
and we'll promote you in like the recommended feed. It's like Apple's App Store, right? You only have
Yeah.
2 stores. You have the Google Play Store and you have the Apple App Store, and that's it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Same thing. So they don't release these numbers, and same with Amazon, with Bezos, with Prime.
Right.
Prime gets nominated now for like all these things, and I think Hulu's gotten a couple
Really?
nominations, yeah, for a couple things. But like these streaming services are like coming up, right? So Spielberg has just created this campaign of anti-Netflix, and he's trying to ban them from competing for Oscars, and really any streaming service, right? But Netflix is the biggest, so I think he wants to start there, and then kind of go from there. So his argument, and I don't know, I want to hear your thoughts on this. His argument is Netflix does not typically release stuff in theaters, and if they
Right.
do, they limited release it. So it's like available at it's like, there's like not that many theaters that play it, and they only release it for like 3 weeks, and then it's on Netflix for everyone to watch. So Spielberg is saying, well, Oscars are for theatrical things that are in the theater.
In the theater, yep.
That's part of their criteria.
Right.
So Netflix has found this kind of gray area where they go, well, it was in theater for 3 weeks. Whereas most of the time these movies are in theaters for, months and months
Right.
before they go to DVD or before they go to a streaming service.
Right.
So he's trying to basically change it to where they have to be in theater for months and months and months before. Or they should just go for Emmy Awards. They should just be allowed to do TV awards. Because technically, they're streaming on TVs. That's basically what they're doing. They're not a theater.
Right. So what's Netflix's opposition to qualifying for an Emmy? I mean, it doesn't seem like a terribly unreasonable. Doesn't seem terribly unreasonable, but maybe they want the glitz and glamour that goes with an Oscar. Is it that what they want? They want to be associated with the Oscars.
People know the Oscars.
Yeah.
So for them to be able to say, this film won an Oscar on Netflix is like a big deal.
Right.
Because then a lot of people will probably watch it if it won an Oscar.
Mm-hmm.
Rome, I don't know, because it's like a smaller foreign language film. But like if they get some big hit and it's an Oscar winner,
Yeah.
it's even bigger.
Well, I mean, I've only looked into it a little bit. I've only delved into that a little bit. So I wanted to see what rules might apply. And my preliminary thought on that is that if Steven Spielberg is trying to change the rules, and what you're saying is that Netflix is saying, well, we have presented in theaters. So I was looking at the 91st Academy Awards of Merit. We're talking about the Oscars Academy.
Mm-hmm.
And rule number 1, the first rule for awards definitions is that the Academy Awards of Merit shall be given annually to honor outstanding artistic and scientific achievements in theatrically released feature-length motion pictures, and on and so on and so forth.
Mm-hmm.
So I think then Spielberg's what his platform is going to have to be is that the definition of theatrical release is going to have to be further defined if 3 weeks in a theater is not enough. Because technically, if the definition is just to be released in theaters, a one-day release ought to qualify.
He's gonna change, yeah.
Yeah.
Or he'll make it like just long enough that Netflix will be like, oh, we could never wait that long. Even a month, they might be like, ooh, can't wait a month.
But I mean, if it's a time related thing, my concern would be then, I mean, the investment in keeping a movie in theaters for so long. I mean, if it's not an economically viable movie for theaters to have to run it or carry it or present it and show it, I mean, that seems like we might have issues with people caught in the middle between Netflix and Spielberg, because Netflix wants to qualify for these, very prestigious awards. So they then force the theaters to carry something that's not profitable.
Maybe. I don't know. That's why they do limited release, right? Because it's not a huge hit movie.
Right.
Netflix's argument is, look, what about the fact that we help underfunded producers?
Mm-hmm.
What about the fact that we show movies to people in cities and towns around the world that don't have a movie theater?
Oh yeah.
So we're giving an opportunity to these people to be a part of this, and that's cool, And I kind of agree. I think Spielberg, who you can imagine is like a godfather of film,
mm-hmm.
Is sort of like, I think he's like he's on the Oscar committee thing, and he's like the president of one of the divisions of it. So he's got a lot of sway. So on April 4th, they're having a general meeting, like a board meeting,
mm-hmm.
and that's when he's going to present this concept of blocking them from the next Oscars. And the Oscars put out a statement. We're like, we'll definitely listen. In other words, when Steven Spielberg says something, we all listen.
Which is a little scary, though, don't you think, about how one individual who has a stake in these awards is pulling a "I'm Steven Spielberg" card?
I would guess that there is in order to get a theatrical version of a film,
mm-hmm.
right? You would need to be recording the audio and doing the picture in ways that are designed for the theater. On Netflix, they don't have to do that. They're not doing Dolby surround sound. They're not doing they're probably still recording them in great qualities and stuff, but are they like, is part of this maybe that they're not doing it like how a professional or like a full-on theatrical producer and director would do it, because they're not putting it in a theater where there's surround speakers and a giant screen and people's attention spans are shorter. Like, do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
They're putting it straight on a small screen. Usually it's your laptop. I mean, most people watch, I mean, maybe a lot of people watch on their TV, but a lot of people watch on their laptops or on their phones on the go.
Sure.
Which is a very different format.
Well, and that also raises, I mean, even aside from formatting issues, is I remember working with a client of mine who was a filmmaker, and it's not just this particular filmmaker's gripe. It was a general gripe about content that needs to go into particular movies, and a lot of it has to do with playing into like censorship and what the movie will be rated. So particular words that might be said, or particular scenes that have to be shot in a certain way to get a movie rating. And something like R-rated movies are very, although they are very entertaining, they're very difficult to market because you have that smaller population. So people who would, filmmakers who really would artistically like to express the message the most fully cannot, because of really censors and ratings rules. So what you're saying, it makes me think that, is the issue bigger than just a theatrical release? Is it having to do with what you said, parameters set for traditional movie makers that Netflix does not necessarily have to adhere to? And I wonder then, and this might be advice for Steven Spielberg, if you like what I have to say, Steven, contact me. I like thinking of out of the box. Subscriber. Yeah. Is maybe the bigger conversation has to be, well, what are the limitations that filmmakers in the traditional sense have? How are they at a disadvantage to compete with Netflix-produced productions, particularly when what's at stake is this prestigious award? And maybe even then, it shouldn't just be the Oscars and the Emmys. Maybe there should be a new and separate category equally as prestigious for the Hulus and the Netflix and all those out there.
Yeah,
I,
like
for one,
streaming Oscars or something.
I, for one, would love to be on that kind of a board, that kind of an academy. And I would nominate you to serve on that kind of a board with me. Yeah, I mean, we're not it's not like we'd be competing with, the Oscars, the Emmys, or it would be its own thing. And I think that that a board like that would need some critical thinkers who like the entertainment realm and can parse down, besides the entertainment value, the content side of it.
I think he makes a decent point that I don't think they, is it fair? Probably not. I don't like that they don't release their numbers like that they're just using the whole like we're a private company thing.
Yeah.
Whereas most other things, you know what the box office is. They have to, or I don't know if they have to, but they disclose it. Netflix doesn't do that. So even like that, I think even some of those things they would maybe make other people happier, because then they could actually see how well they're doing.
Right.
So I think another argument is, like, to your point, if they put the numbers up for some of these Netflix ones that do go to theaters, you'd see that the numbers are terrible. So therefore, is it having the same impact as some of these other films that are there longer? And I don't know. There's an interesting point there, right?
Well, I, for one, think even the social factor of when you consume Netflix, I mean, you'll sit in front of a TV for 30 minutes trying to decide what to watch. Once you finally decided, you'll watch it for 15 minutes and decide you're bored. You're just not as invested. But I'll tell you what, if I'm paying $25 for my child to see a movie, and then plus myself to see a movie, and then I know I'm going to be buying food for her, because there's no way I can take Aoife to a movie theater and have her just peacefully walk past the concession. There's just no way. So if
or me.
Or you. Yeah.
It's yummy snacks there.
That are expensive, and I can only expense so much of it, Jordan.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
The friend expense account only goes so far.
Card or whatever, and then you get all those points. You get free movies. And
I have the Scene card. I don't even know what benefits I have. Okay. I'm that ridiculous kind of I sign up for everything, and I don't know what benefits I have. Yeah. But I mean, the bottom line is my point is that when I invest in going to a movie theater, I'm going to a movie theater. So you can only imagine, for instance, when I took Aoife to go see the Wonder Woman movie Was it last year or the year before? And I loved it, but 15 minutes in, she's like, meh, I'm bored.
Oh no.
And I was very torn between, all right, well, whatever you want, child. And like, I paid practically $50 for us to sit in this seat. You've been here for 15 minutes. We will sit through this movie and you will like it. Or just fall asleep. Just sleep.
Isn't it crazy though that one movie is more than 1 month of Netflix?
Right? And that's what I'm saying, that investment factor.
That's crazy.
Right?
But it's because they have like a tenth of the audience at theaters.
I think that there's a ways that theaters could bring people back.
Yeah.
In.
Young people?
I think so. I mean, I think that there's ways to enhance that experience.
Smell-o-vision?
Oh my God. You and your words. What I can only imagine what smell-o-vision.
It's when you can smell stuff in a movie.
I don't want to smell
Like
stuff.
you're in a Jurassic Park movie, you smell like dinosaurs and poop and then there's like mud and then like war movies, there's like... No, you wouldn't want to... No? Okay. So you won't inject me with a microchip.
No.
You won't go to a smell-o-vision movie with me.
No.
Wow. What will you do, Yao?
I'll do a podcast with you every week. I'll deliver it
That's
on
pretty
time.
darn good.
Yeah. But
Well-
that's about the extent of it. I'm sorry. You're asking for way too much if you want more than that.
Fair enough. Well,
I'll offer you one more thing.
Oh,
if
okay.
you are ever part of an extradition process to the U.S., which I don't understand why you would be, but if you are, you can call me
thank
day
you.
or night, and I will do my best to bail you out.
Thank you.
I'll do my best. But if it's a $10 million bail price tag, like Meng Wanzhao's was,
Was hers 10?
$10 million.
And they just paid it.
Well, I don't think she has a problem
She's
paying
home.
that.
I know, but that's crazy. Especially when Daddy runs Huawei.
I'd help to raise. I'd set up a pretty nice GoFundMe page for you.
Oh,
I would.
that's so thoughtful.
The Free Jordan Boyd
I'd
campaign.
probably... Which one did you say? Which crowdfunding platform?
I'm afraid to say now because it looks like you're about to throw out a conspiracy
Which one did
theory.
you say?
GoFund.
Yeah, GoFundMe's pretty good. Yeah, I'll trust GoFundMe.
Okay. All right. Well, we can have Jordan's crowdfunding platform reviews on another episode.
Don't forget, unfortunately, next week, you are not able to make it.
I am not able to make it. No.
Which tier for Yao?
No.
But replacing Yao, no, I'm just kidding, not replacing, but here to support me or / be my guest is Dr. Miriam Burchuk, who we mentioned last show, who will be joining us, our podcast, to talk a bit about nutrition and how it affects people and how you can sort of prevent health issues with better nutrition, which I think some people know about, others don't. And I know you're going to give me some of the questions you had for her about the new Canada Food Guide, which I know a lot of parents care about and is really important. And I think she has some pretty interesting theories on it.
Well, which is very timely because I had a lot of questions about the new Canada Food Guide anyway. Yeah, because I get it that fruits and veggies are healthy and you're supposed to get more. And then I just saw what, and I know, I mean, everybody who's going to comment about me having to reduce my red meat intake or meat intake in general because it's not sustainable, and the dairy, my love for dairy, I know, I get it, but I don't know, and I need direction as to how to use this Canada Food Guide as my new guide when I, especially being an Alberta girl, I love my Alberta beef. Yeah, the beef and the milk and what am I supposed to do? I was raised on a very different food guide. What am I supposed to do with this new one? How do I make it more palatable?
There's people who eat all meat only and no veggies that are super healthy. Maybe we could talk about, maybe I'll ask her about that.
I'd like to hear from her because, I like you, I trust you, but you're not quite the pro that...
Rude. Yeah.
And
here's one that I want to ask her.
Yeah.
Supposedly, I was watching Shark Tank last night, new episode of Shark Tank. And if you don't watch Shark Tank, it's a pretty awesome show about entrepreneurs and pitching. They had a baby food maker on there that created this savory based baby food instead of the sweet kind of baby food they have now. And supposedly there's a window between age 3 months and age 7 months that if you feed a baby savory baby food that has more like herbs and like garlicky type flavors, you can actually train their palate to crave those foods more instead of sugary foods.
It's true.
You've heard that's true?
My own child was my own social experiment in that.
And it worked?
Yeah, until I let my mother start watching.
Oh, and then they gave her chocolate.
Yeah. But it is. Damn it, Mother Yao. I actually had, my Aoife, when she was young, there was a certain window where I did follow that advice.
That's so crazy.
Well, it works for my child, so I can't say that it worked for everybody else, but she would ask me for like broccoli. She would ask for string beans. She would.
So it kind of did work.
Yeah,
until
it
she
did.
found chocolate.
Yeah, and then what else is there? I mean, she thought strawberries were too sweet. You know, but once you compare,
that's so great. See, that's what I've heard.
Yes.
Even fruit is too sweet for these kids once they grow up.
Yep.
Wow.
Yep.
That's so cool.
But then
should I ask Miriam about that?
Yeah, and if you want, I'll bring Aoife in as a guest to talk about her experience one day. Just be prepared that she will talk about everything else as well.
We should definitely have a Aoife guest podcast one time.
For her birthday, maybe.
Maybe for her birthday. We could do a little 15-minute at the end or something. And anyways, we're getting a couple subscribers a day now. Okay?
Great.
I don't want to brag. That's not that many, but it's a lot for us. And so it's exciting because I think people are, I don't know, resonating with what we're talking about, which is cool. I hope that what we talk about, I know sometimes is a bit random, but I mean, I hope people resonate with it. And again, we're always looking for topics. So if people want to send us their topics or question us or debate us on anything.
Yeah, debate us, question us, give us things to talk about. I mean, I like our stream of consciousness format. I think there's already a lot of news out there. There's a lot of very structured information, structured discussions. I like that we can debate, and I like that you horrify me on a daily basis.
Well, and we're going to start bringing in more guests like we've talked about, which I think will just be another way that we can go much deeper into topics in topics we care about and get real expertise on things we have absolutely no knowledge on.
Right. All right. So if you guys want to be part of our production meetings or the topic of our discussions.
Or a guest, if you're interesting. Yeah. You have to be like pretty interesting though. Yeah, because it was pretty interesting. So.
And Boyd is pretty interesting as well.
Thank you. I was kind of waiting for that, but.
And that should wrap up the high five episode.
Yeah. Episode 5.
High five.
That's a wrap.